Okay, so we have I should say, another special speaker joining MBS this year. Someone who has gracefully contributed a number of articles to the Discovery Journal in the past number of years, Heidi and Cherise with DFO. And Heidi is a biologist in the Deep-Sea Ecology Program at Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Her work takes her to some of the most remote and fascinating places on Earth, where she studies complex and fragile ecosystems in the deep ocean, like really deep. Heidi is passionate about using science to inform management and conservation decisions that protect these unique environments. She also loves sharing stories from the deep, providing an opportunity for people to connect with and change their relationship with the ocean. So tonight her talk is going to be about the Deep Sea Ecology Program at Fisheries and Oceans Canada as part of a collaborative project called the Northeast Pacific Deep Sea Exploration Project that has a mission to discover, explore, and monitor places for future management and conservation. In recent years, the team has used remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, robots directed from the surface, to study deep sea ecosystems along the Pacific coast. Our discoveries from the depths of British Columbia's ocean floor aren't just reshaping local marine knowledge, they're rewriting the global story of the deep sea. Come along to join in the joy of discovery and see incredible imagery of the deep sea. But before passing this over to Heidi, I want to say that I'm really, I think DFO and probably you and your team have done exceptional work with transmitting, educating the public, involving First Nations all up and down the coast. It's really quite impressive and inspiring to see how your expeditions have become so educational wise and equitable to all people that are living on the coast. So I hand it over to you, Heidi.
So much. That was such a nice introduction. And I have to say, I heard some of your speakers there. I know Alyssa's talk next month is going to be exciting. I've seen a version of it lately. And the Wolves one, oh, yeah, very great. You guys are pulling together some great talks. So thank you all for having me and for your attention tonight. Sheila pretty much told you what I'm going to do, so that's great. Yeah, just kind of all of our discoveries from the deep sea. That's hence the title of the talk. And I'm part of the Deep-Sea Ecology Program at Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and we're part of this larger collaboration that you're about to hear from. And so what is my job? I get to study the deep sea, and it's pretty funny because one of the things that I like to do about in the deep sea world is brag about how cool our deep sea is here in Canada. It actually is true. We have some of the coolest deep sea because we are in the unique situation where we have incredible tectonic plate activity happening here within our waters, like within the jurisdiction of Canada. So if you go back to like high school biology or I guess geology, but the world's made up of like tectonic plates floating around on magma. We actually have the world's smallest tectonic plate. So it means we have areas of like slip, we have areas of them moving apart, areas of them coming together, and we have a lot of dynamic seafloor activity. And this cascades and has incredible effects on the deep sea, the life as well down there. So my job is to provide science advice and study and learn about what we call ecologically and biologically significant areas in the deep sea. When people used to think about the deep sea, they'd think about kind of like going down and seeing like mud and the occasional thing. It's nothing like that anymore. It's so cool and it's very exciting. And what we want to provide science advice about is where there's areas of like really abundant life, where it's not just the paveboard mud all the time, but where life congregates. And so there's kind of four areas that we focus on. The first being seamounts. So a seamount is a mountain that's underwater. It's basically an ancient volcano that's no longer erupting. So this magma that's underneath the tectonic plates, it can bubble up, come to the surface, it shoots out volcanoes, it makes these structures. But what's really cool about seamounts is that they have to be at least 1,000 meters tall to be considered a seamount. And life congregates around them. It's the same kind of idea as like when you're on a mountain, like you're standing on the edge and you feel all the breezes coming up and the birds fly by and all that great stuff. It's the same sort of thing in the deep ocean. So if you think about these global currents coming by, they hit these huge structures, they push this deep nutrient-rich water up, and it creates kind of positive influences for the whole like ecosystem around it. So things can grow in the sea surfaces. There's animals that can pluck things from the water column as it passes. So incredible life builds up. One of the next places where we have lots of life, believe it or not, when I tell you about this, you're gonna be like, how does life thrive there? But weirdly it does. So hydrothermal vents. This is where these tectonic plates are actually moving apart from each other. The seawater basically gets pulled in. It's getting superheated by the magma, by that warm stuff underneath the Earth's core. And as it's getting heated up, it picks up all these minerals from the Earth's crust, and it actually gets pressurized and superheated, and it shoots out, and it's 400 degrees Celsius water. Again, all those things that I just described, you're like, why is there life? Strangely, life can thrive at these sites, and it's largely because of bacteria. So bacteria has changed the way we understand life on our planet, but also how we look for life on other planets. So at hydrothermal vents, these were discovered in the late 70s, early 80s. They found that whole ecosystems can grow up. Bacteria uses the chemical energy instead of plants using the sun's energy. Bacteria uses chemical energy, and it creates the building blocks, carbon for food webs. So it kind of changed our understanding of how life exists on this planet. They also provide hard structures for things like corals and sponges to settle on. Another area is the cold seep habitat. So this is where the tectonic plates usually are coming together, and pressure builds up and gases build up. And these little pockets of gases can bubble out into the seafloor. It's usually methane, but it could be all sorts of different hydrocarbons, some sulfides. And again, bacteria gets to work and creates a food web, and also creates carbonate rock. So carbonate rock is formed here, which then again has increasing habit or cascading effects on the seafloor because it creates hard structure. Things can settle on it, they can hide in it, they can use it as nursing ground. So a lot of abundant life around cold seeps. And last but not least are corals and sponges and coral and sponge habitat. So corals and sponges are animals that are long-lived, slow-growing. They usually attach to the seafloor, and they can be they're rigid in structure. They filter food from the water column, but they can be quite fragile. But especially the corals, a lot of people think, oh, coral reefs. Up here in temperate waters, we have corals, but they are more like branching tree-like structures. But if you can think about that, they then provide so much habitat and structural heterogeneity in the deep sea. So all of these are areas that we study and we provide science advice about. My job is to not only research it, but think about the management and conservation and provide science advice about that within Fisheries and Oceans Canada. And we have some conservation goals. And for example, seamounts, we had 47 seamounts and 35 hydrothermal vents just recently protected as of last year, or 2024, sorry, now that's a year and a bit ago, into Canada's largest marine protected area, the Tonga and Hutchquequot Sea Geese Marine Protected Area. So our research informed the establishment of this marine protected area. It's a co-managed marine protected area with Fisheries and Oceans Canada representing the government of Canada. And then it's co-managed with the Pacheedaht, Quatsino, Nuu-Chulnith, and Haida First Nations. We also do a lot of work up here at the San Kinglas Bowie Marine Protected Area. That's co-managed with the Haida. And then we've been doing a lot of work over the past couple of years, and you're going to hear a little bit about the stories today about there's some proposed marine protected area networks off of the west coast and north coast of Haida Gwaii. There's this very special study spot, the Tusa-Wilson Seamount Complex, and then we've got some cold seep areas that are just mind-boggling. And we're studying them and going to provide the science advice that there's some protection around them as well. And so together, there's over 166,000 kilometers squared of like really important deep sea habitat that we have to provide science advice about. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of work for two people in a marine in our program. And but as you can also see here, that it's really important that we're collaborating. And so when we go out and do research or we want to create science documents about these areas, we want to work together. And so kind of naturally, this is too much work for two people. You see the code management here. This group formed called the Northeast Pacific Deep-Sea Exploration Project. What we have to do together is we have a mission to like discover and explore the deep sea, share the stories, and get them out into the world and to try and like change people's relationship with the deep sea and with the benefits of conservation and for people for generations to come. And this collaboration now is with the Council of the Haida Nation, ourselves, Nuu-Chulnith Tribal Council, Ocean Networks Canada, and Royal BC Museum in Nuvik. Now, what we did is we got this project endorsed through the United Nations Ocean Decade. If you haven't heard about this, it was the goal for the decade for the science we need for the oceans we want. It's international global initiative trying to get people aligned in working together for the ocean. And we kind of focused on three key areas that we felt our project could work towards. One is protecting and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity, ensuring skills, technology, and knowledge for all, and trying to change humanity's relationship with the ocean. So by attending things like tonight and having you guys fall in love with the deep sea and not just think of it as a mysterious, strange, far off place. We are trying to hit some of the conservation goals of international commitments of the Convention of Biological Diversity of 30% protection of the ocean by 2030. We are trying to honor also concurrently, it's the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, and we all know the importance of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We try and honor that in our work. Our work does focus a lot on these ecologically and biologically significant areas, and this is happening on a global stage using this terminology and the criteria for establishing them around the world. And our conservation is largely through marine protected areas or Indigenous-led conservation areas, and at the very least, trying to exclude things that would, like bottom contact fishing. Now, when I say we're working together, particularly from our Indigenous colleagues' perspective, I just wanted to highlight that like this is very important to us and it is very real. So when we get the opportunity most times each year to go out and we get to do some research in the sea, and we live on these Coast Guard vessels usually for a couple of weeks, and we work with these robots that Sheila was talking about. And I just wanted to highlight that as part of the Ocean Decade and honoring our project. We do try and ensure that like we are planning the science, for months beforehand. We are planning outreach that we're going to do while we're out at sea, and this happens all together collectively as a group. And importantly, we have Indigenous colleagues who are ensuring that we're connecting with the communities who are co-managing these areas. We actually go out to sea together, so we try to ensure that there's opportunities for collaborators as well as like all the partners from the project to come out to sea. And then we do outreach together, and this is really special. So I'll share with you the website if you ever want to follow along with us. But we not only stream all of our dives live on our website, but we also do like special events, kind of like this today. But some of the more special ones for me have been, we've been connecting with like the local communities, like the Indigenous summer camps. And so we're like talking to a bunch of 10-year-olds who come up and talk to the screen real close and are asking questions about the deep sea. We also have knowledge exchange opportunities. So in the bottom right corner here, we were hearing about the Indigenous oral histories and of a special place, and learning more about the place from their perspectives as well. So very important for when we're doing the research up there. This is a video that I'm going to share with you because I know I've been talking to you about going on these expeditions and that sort of thing. So this is typically how we're gathering the information, and we kind of pick a study topic for a few weeks that we're going to try and accomplish. We go out into the deep sea on these vessels off the coast, and we use special tools. And this is kind of like a summary video of what we can kind of accomplish within that time frame. So hopefully this gives you an idea about what we're talking about.
The 2025 NEPDEP expedition has wrapped up after 11 days of exploring the deep sea offshore of Vancouver Island in Canada. We continued our mission to explore, understand, and protect important places in the deep. Using the new remotely operated vehicle Yellow Eye, we dove into unexplored areas along the Winona Ridge, La Perouse, and Swiftsure banks, looking to find and document cold seep habitat. Fueled by bubbling methane rising from the seabed, these extraordinary sites build mineral structures that sustain life with chemical energy instead of sunlight. Throughout our dives, we documented these bubbling vents along with chemosynthetic life forms and vast carbonate rock formations. Our sites highlighted the diversity of cold seep habitats, each revealing unique features and communities. At Winona Ridge, we discovered that the carbonate structures extend far beyond the previously known boundaries. At La Perouse Bank, carbonate boulders provided habitat for schools of juvenile and adult rockfish. Swiftsure Bank featured active bubbling streams emerging from shallow sediments. Each area was home to a unique variety of animals. We captured beautiful imagery of rarely seen cold seep habitats and their inhabitants, including hagfish, rough-tail skates, tanner crabs, thorny heads, and flapjack octopus. We also witnessed some unique animal behaviors, including an octopus using a glass sponge as a den and the mating rituals of the scarlet king crab. Unfortunately, during many of our dives, we continued to encounter the long-lasting effects of anthropogenic activities, observing lost fishing gear entangled within these fragile structures, as well as trawl marks etched into the seabed. We successfully deployed one of the largest heat flow probes in North America, which restores Canada's capacity to conduct marine heat flow surveys. At nearly 8 meters long, this groundbreaking technology has deepened our understanding of the marine geology and hydrogeology in these coastal areas. This tool is instrumental to planned future studies seeking to understand fluid pathways between the ocean and the seafloor, and how this exchange supports diverse seafloor communities, such as the giant deep-sea skate nursery offshore of Haida Gwaii, documented on previous NEPDEP expeditions. We studied the water column surrounding the cold seep habitats using tools lowered from the ship. We used a rosette to measure the chemical properties of the water electronically and to collect water samples for future analysis. We also collected samples of zooplankton using both bongo nets and an underwater camera, which will allow us to identify the composition of the zooplankton community that lives above the methane seeps. The expedition activities were broadcast to a global audience as we hosted live outreach events from the ship, shared highlights on social media, and live streamed all dives. Our expedition was made possible thanks to the crew of the Canadian Coast Guard ship, the John P. Tully. The at-sea team was a multinational and interdisciplinary collective working together to better understand, manage, and conserve our oceans.
Great. So I'm going to get into a bit of science here. If anyone had any questions, you feel free to ask or put them in the chat, that's great. But yeah, other than having a good time at sea together, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the discoveries that we're finding from this research. We have been going out for quite a few years now, and we usually get that opportunity like once a year. So cold seeps, this place that we've been talking to you about, I think you noticed in that first map that I had that it didn't actually have any conservation or marine protected areas around them yet. They're kind of later to the game in the sense of Canadian attention for their importance in the deep sea. And we're hoping to move forward with some of that. So again, this is where pressurized gas starts bubbling out of the seafloor. Strangely enough, whole life can start building up. What you're seeing here is around the bubbles, we've got bacterial mats, and then actually you're seeing a lot of shells here. So a lot of shells will host symbiotic bacteria on them who can help process the chemicals that are coming out of the seafloor. And then again, other animals can come in and feed in this ecosystem, and it has cascading effects. When this Deep-Sea Ecology Program started back in 2018, they thought there was about 250 potential sites along our coast of where there's like flares, indications of these bubbles coming out of the seafloor in the water column. Not just by Fisheries and Oceans Canada, but we're working with like NRCan, Geomar, other scientists, all that sort of thing. As of today, we are up to 16,000 flares that have been mapped in our seafloor. So definitely more extensive than we thought. But what's even more crazy is that some of these gas plumes coming out of the seafloor can measure over a kilometer tall. So if you start thinking about the implications this have of things like methane coming out of the seafloor. So what we're trying to do right now is find where these most important sites are, describe them, try and provide science advice about their importance for the communities. And then we're also considering their role in the carbon cycle and in our climate change. And let's just say it's very interesting, and we're going to be getting some things out soon. And some of the heights of these gas bubbles combined with how many years they've been detected by different organizations, it actually shows that once cold seeps were kind of thought to be like ephemeral, like, oh, they're here and then they go away. Well, they can turn on and off, but they can be within kind of an area over a long period of time. And one of our more prominent systems along the west coast of Vancouver Island, our colleague at Geomar is suggesting that what he's seeing is suggesting that that one area has been active for over 10,000 years alone. So again, changing kind of what we believed of cold seep systems just here off of our in our own waters. The habitats can be quite extensive. This is like that carbonate rock that I was telling you about that forms largely through the activity of bacteria. It's got chemosynthetic animals on it. Sorry, chemosynthetic is these animals that are using the chemicals to create life. But then commercial species also come in as well. So we've been looking at kind of how these change along our coast, where they are. We've kind of, the black points on this map are ones that we've started to look at ourselves visually, and that we're seeing that no one cold seep looks the same. So for example, there's something called a mud volcano off of the west coast of Haida Gwaii, and it actually is over 60 kilometers long, like really large features. There's off the Winona Ridge off the west coast of Vancouver Island, we have this huge ridge, and actually we went back this summer and confirmed that it's longer than this 25 kilometers, but this hard carbonate rock, again on the shelf where it's typically known to be more muddy, creating life and habitat for different animals. And then just further south, we've got this really fascinating site at the Hesquiat Slope where the chemicals, basically methane, has actually formed into ice, a solid form from the pressure. So that's what that icebergy looky thing is it actually is basically a deep sea iceberg. It's a gas hydrate. It's like a solid. And then they also have boulders at this site, and these boulders have created incredible habitat that is being used by deep sea octopus. And they're actually using it as nursery grounds and having their babies on them. We've also unfortunately documented what happens when you have bottom contact fishing or destructive activities. So instead of thinking about that gorgeous ridge you just saw of the carbonate rock, look at where there's heavy bottom trawling impacts and how that carbonate doesn't have time to form up, the community doesn't have time to form up. And essentially, if you think about it, the bubbles have more opportunity to get out and spread and get into the water column as well. And just you're getting lost in the other direction. If you think about it, for fisher people, that must be really frustrating to get your gear lost on these hard structures if they're not properly mapped. The animals are very cool. So again, lots of these chemosynthetics, so animals that use chemicals. Usually they have symbionts. So these are tube worms that have bacteria that live in them. And then the cascading effects to the whole ecosystem. So there's a lot of commercial species that we're witnessing at these sites as well. So providing nursery grounds and feeding grounds and all those great things. So the bacteria, the clams, those are like the known associates with the cold seep habitat, but we're also providing evidence of all these other things that are coming in. Also species at risk, some of our rockfish that are of concern or higher status. And oh yes, I forgot about this, sorry. But that cool mound that I was talking about on the Hesking slope, so then that ice float, it's blistering and coming upwards. So it's like basically being pushed up out of the seafloor. And that's what's kind of creating some of the materials that are rolling down and making the more boulder shape things. And if we look closely, that the large carbonate structures have deep sea octopus on them. And when we looked in closely beneath them, we could see their eggs. And if you look closely, you can actually see the eye spots of the developing embryos. And this species of octopus is known in the deep sea, in the Pacific, not just in our waters. And there was a site off of the coast of California, near Mbari, a research institute. And they basically had the opportunity to go past and visit this site over many years of their work. And they discovered that this species has the longest gestation period known of animals on our planet. They actually care for their animal or care for the young or their eggs for over 4.5 years. So the mothers actually stop eating, they stop moving. They do little movements, but they don't swim and move away. And then, so they waste away. And that's what you're seeing in this image is the scavengers are actually coming in for her, not for the babies, because she's probably getting a smell because she's getting close to the end of life. The good news is that at this site nearby, we did see babies. So the mums are successful. They are using this habitat nursery ground. It's just absolutely incredible. So that's cold seeps. That's kind of research that's up and coming. I think they're going to be an important wood protected area. I wanted to tell you a little bit as well about a second opportunity this year. You saw a great summary video of what we did kind of in July. We had a unique opportunity through a collaboration to go out on a boat that we don't usually go on. So this is what happens before we go out. We kind of have a plan of where we're going to go. It's a lot of area to cover. So I have to warn you, this was an ambitious plan when we combined in weather and a few other things. We did not get to all these sites, but we come up with a plan of where we would like to go in our waters. And I'm going to show you just a few really cool things. This was actually September, so not that long ago. We haven't worked up the data in detail, but what you'll see is that we can already learn so much just even by bringing cameras down in our deep sea. There is so little known about deep sea in the world. It's incredible. I don't know if you know this, but we've mapped more of the surface of Mars now than we have of our own planet. We're trying to get to 30% of the ocean mapped, and we're not there yet. And then that's mapped, visually seen or explored. It's less than 1%. It's like anyway, it's incredible how little deep sea we've seen. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about what we're doing. I'll draw your attention to the Tuzo-Wilson Seamount Complex, kind of off the southern tip of Haida Gwaii. And that's going to be one of the first really cool stories that I tell you about. So this is not the classic Fisheries and Oceans vessel that I showed you before. This is the Campak Valor. It's an old trawling vessel that's been converted into a science ship. And it was interesting for me because the Coast Guard vessels are definitely a little bit more posh than this one, I guess we'd say, but we still had a really great time. We were really well taken care of for it by the crew. But yeah, we live in this front part of the vessel here, and there was only 2 washrooms for 22 people. So that was an experience, but actually it went well because everyone's on shifts and all sorts of great things. And then we actually conduct the science from the back, the aft deck here, and we might actually work in containers, which sounds crazy, but is actually successful. We take out things called remotely operated vehicles. They're basically really big, cool robots. So I'm just going to call it a robot instead of ROV. To orientate you to the ROV here, this one's one of the largest I've ever seen. So you can see our colleague Scott there. He's worked with this ROV. It's taller than him. There's so many lights and sensors on it, and there's a ton of cameras. So we have a main forward-facing camera, we have downward-facing cameras, and then we have cameras that are positioned on the robot to keep it safe in space and time. There's sensors that are collecting things like how deep it is, what the temperature of the water is, the oxygen levels. And then hopefully you can see it here off onto each side. There's these 2 arms. They're called manipulators. They basically are like little crab claws that can open and close, which can then put specimens, rocks, all sorts of things into these clear boxes we can collect off the seafloor, or we can deploy things into the deep sea. And what happens is it's picked up off the aft deck of the boat or the back of the boat, and it's launched. This one can actually withstand greater seas because of the special crane you're seeing. And it's lowered into the water, and then it's piloted from the back of the deck. That big cable you're seeing that comes up from it is a fiber optic cable that we can then control from the deck. So no, I do not have to go down in any submersibles, which is great for me. I have no interest in doing that. This is what it looks like from the control room. It's actually a super cool space to be in. This is one of those containers, and you don't feel like you're in a container. It's just super cool. So what you're seeing in the front row there is that's the pilot. So the company that works with the ROV or the robot. They have a screen, for example, up to the right that's telling them navigation. So where exactly the vessel is, where exactly the robot is in the water. There's multiple screens of the different angles. There's a radar telling them if there's anything coming up that we can't visually see. There's a whole bunch of sensors you can't see on the bottom. And then there's the main driving cameras. And then what we do in this back row is the scientists, and we have a few of the same screens, mainly the main forward-facing camera. We keep our own notes and annotations on what's happening. And then what's really cool, I think you can see, but that main camera, I can like circle something on it, and then it will tell the pilots, oh, like she wants to look at that thing that she's just circled, which is pretty neat. This is another view of what the pilot row looks like when you're controlling one of these robots. And what I love here is if you look at the main screen, there's that manipulator, that arm is out, and something is being picked up off the seafloor. But what I love about this perspective is the pilot here, she's actually controlling that with this cool, I don't even know what to call it, remote control, but like it has the same pivot points that the arm does. And she has different buttons that close and open and so it's so fascinating to be sitting in a room with these like skilled technicians who are like controlling a robot that's 2,000 meters below you and seeing the stuff on the seafloor that like, it's just an incredible experience and really fun to be a part of. And so I just thought I'd share that cool picture. I love that kind of perspective, like what's going on. One of the really neat things for us as well about this expedition was that our main offshore Coast Guard vessel doesn't actually have really good mapping capabilities. So I keep talking about mapping the seafloor. So what does that mean? We want to measure the height of the seafloor and what's down there. And you can do that most effectively the same way that like bats can find their way in space. So it's about sending sound out, having it reflect off things, come back, and you measure the distance. The measuring capabilities we have on our typical Coast Guard vessel is something called a single beam. So this image just really highlights for you that like if you're going along the seafloor and you have one sound coming out, you get a very narrow picture of the seafloor and what it's actually measuring. Whereas the multi-beam, you send out multiple sounds, multiple frequencies, it comes back to you and you can get an idea of like really spatial 3D structure. And so if you were to go to Google Maps right now, This area is the area that's the Tuzo-Wilson Seamount Complex, and it kind of looks like some cool bumps on the seafloor. This is largely through like satellite measurements that I won't really get into, and some guesstimates based off of rough like single beam mapping and stuff like that, and sometimes out of date multi-beam mapping. And so we were able to go from something that looks like this to something that looks like this. And I know it just looks small, but for someone who's trying to conduct science, understand where the summit of seamounts are, that sort of thing, this was absolutely incredible. And then we have technicians who, do things that, create models for us, and then we can really orientate the science in space and time. And just a very important tool that is kind of lacking in our deep sea on our coast, which is too bad, but very great opportunity for us this time. And just to give you context of that mapping, in 2016, we thought there were 20 seamounts off of the west coast of British Columbia. Again, this is when you're looking at these maps in detail. These are like the passing of the measuring tools. So as you can see, the coverage is decent, but it's not actually like to the scale that you need. And some of these are actually really old. Like if I clicked on this line in a mapping software, it's actually from, out of date, not super accurate anymore. So in the 6 years after this program was focused, they did more mapping, more modeling, so more of the mathematical work. And we actually have over 65 seamounts in our waters. So like talk about, not only do we not know what life's down there, this isn't even seeing the seafloor. This is like measuring the seafloor. We didn't know about 40 some structures that measure over 1,000 meters tall in our own waters. And so at the very fundamental, like just blows my mind how much there is to still learn about the deep sea. I switched to the deep sea later in my career, and I hope you guys can all tell I find it really exciting and very cool to study. Our job at DFO is then to go through and like learn more about these seamounts, try and classify them, study them. There's the figure ups there aren't important right now, other than I wanted to show you that like our job now is trying to understand these seamounts. Again, we have not visually seen all of them, but just trying to better understand them. Things that we're using to try and classify them are like the depth of their summit, also the depth of where they start, how much food they're getting. There ended up being 7 classes, and also some stratification of life within these depths of the seamounts, of what kind of animals you would expect to find. And what happens in BC waters is we actually have some naturally occurring low oxygen zones, and that actually really helps stratify the life along our seamounts. But even with all this work going on, I have to admit, we keep getting asked to say like, well, can you predict if you go to a seamount what the life is? And to be honest, you can't. And there just kept being all these examples of like, literally, this is the same seamount, just a different side. Okay, completely different communities. This one's largely glass sponges. This one's these coral sea whips. We just kept having a bunch of examples from that. So one of the things that we decided to go do is go to this Tuzo-Wilson Seamount Complex area. 80% of the seamounts have been protected, but these two hadn't. But they were a really good study case for us for trying to be like, hey, can we find out, what is a classic seamount community by comparing them? And one of the reasons why we wanted to go to these two seamounts is that they had so much similarities. They are actually only 4 kilometers apart. They have the similar depths of their seamount summits. They're so close together that they're in the same currents. We went to the same side, and basically this was to try and answer this question. And I'm just going to spoiler alert, this is a couple of years ago, but we went to the seamounts and they just had really different communities. The one had a lot of carnivorous sponges, so sponges that eat other animals. I can get into that another time. It's a crazy concept. And then the other one just had an incredible abundance of life, like just absolutely incredible. Huge coral gardens. We started seeing all these skates everywhere. Lots of crabs and you'll see it in a moment, but just incredible amount of life. And, why are these two seamounts so different? We'd already accounted for side. We went up the same sides. We were going at the same depths. They're in the same current. They're really close to each other. They have the same productivity. If you look at the surface waters. So it's a big question for us. And we ended up finding out a really cool story that I'm going to tell you about how these two seamounts are connected and how it's changing the way we understand life on our coast, and how very cool it is. This is an example of like the biodiversity of life down there. There's a whale fall because whales probably frequent this a lot. There's a whole bunch of reproductive behaviors. This is the blob sculpin. It's often like shown with a milty face in cartoons and stuff like this, but it's really cute under the seafloor where it's meant to be. They have pink eggs and they protect their pink eggs. These crabs, there was a crab mate guarding a crab and then fighting off another one. We saw more of these brooding octopus. And then the skate nursery. This skate nursery is the big story. One of these deep sea skates is called the Pacific white skate, and it lays golden eggs. Pretty cool, huh? Bright yellow eggs here. Over their development time, they turn to tan and then brown and then this dark black you're seeing. And then they're also really huge. Some of you may know mermaids' purses that are another word that's often used for skate eggs. They're often really small. You might find them on the West Coast or on a beach sometimes. These ones are huge. They're absolutely huge. And we kept finding them everywhere there. So now that you know what those eggs are, if you start looking at this picture, I hope you can start seeing like, oh, wow, there's a lot of them. There's like at least 4, okay, yellowish one. Oh, there's some black ones. When you actually count the eggs in this picture alone, this is how many eggs there are. So we've been going back now for a couple of years, and this seamount is being used by 3 different species, but our star of our show is their Pacific white skate. And they are basically coming up the west coast of the slope. They're coming up to the summit of the seamount, and they are literally, we've counted or like done measurements and calculations and all these great things. There's over 2 million eggs on this one seamount alone in BC waters. It's absolutely incredible. And what is happening here, those 2 connected seamounts, is that amazingly through this geological process, the skate nursery like this has been discovered in one other place in the world where there's hydrothermal vents, so warm waters. So we started paying attention to like, okay, our skate nursery has a lot more than theirs, but like what could be causing this? And so we started looking for signs of warmth. And that's how we kind of got to this story. So it looks like that the one seamount, it's just slightly higher. Basically, seamounts, there's these ancient volcanoes. They have basalt. That basalt is actually kind of porous, so it can take in water. It gets entrained in the seamount, but because these 2 seamounts are so close to our coast, they actually also have a lot of sediment that comes down on them. So the water is coming in and then it's getting trapped and then it's getting warmed by that lithospheric heat. And then amazingly, it's coming out on the summit of this seamount. And so we started looking for signs of heat, this fluid exchange between these 2 different seamounts. You could kind of, this staining, this yellow staining, you're seeing this image. This is usually a good kind of indicator that heat's coming out. We started temperature probing, and I know this doesn't look like a big difference, but when you're in the deep sea and your egg development takes a long time, a whole degree difference of temperature could be acting like an incubator and theoretically speeding up this process for them. So we have gone back to this seamount now a few times. I'll admit it, it's probably getting to be one of our most well-studied seamounts, but it's a global phenomenon. This is only the 3rd or 4th place in the world that this has been, and a phenomenon like this has ever been discovered, combined with the skate seamount. It's just actually, our skate nursery is absolutely incredible. We paired with a geologist who went and took that big long stick as actually a temperature probe. And though the findings are preliminary, she was able to confirm that she's seen evidence of between the 2 seamounts, the heat flow showing that there's a change between the 2 of them and that they are connected. I said that we were back here in September.
I sure did.
Oh, shoot. I don't want to hear myself. I'm going to turn off the sound on that. Sorry. But we got to witness a female literally in the midst of laying an egg. You can see it right there, that bright yellow thing sticking out the back. we had seen this once before, and I thought it was like a 1 in a billion shot. I didn't think we'd see it again. And like to think that anyway, we came down and we saw this female in the midst of laying an egg, and it's just such an incredible thing to witness and to watch these behaviors on these seamounts. This is just from another viewpoint. There's the large corals. I have to admit the lighting isn't the best on this video. I wish it was a tiny bit better, but yeah. Aren't they majestic creatures watching them swim through the water column? Okay, I'm almost done here. This seamount, I also just wanted to highlight how cool it is because it's one of the coolest seamounts ever, is that we found Canada's first precious coral bed. So we knew that Canada had corals. They make these branching structures, but precious corals are a type of coral, and they exist around the world. They're kind of a class that's known for being that it's what jewelry is made out of. Like it's the extra bright, it's the extra shiny, polished, nice looking jewelry. And so because of that, it's been like heavily fished or sourced in many places in the world, and sometimes even gone extinct, different species. And so we knew the species existed on our coast, but we never found more than one or two ever. And we found on the seamount a coral bed. And we went back this summer and we went to September, I guess, sorry. Then we went to a completely different side of the seamount and found even bigger ones, even more extensive a garden. So this place is just a place that keeps revealing incredible mysteries to us. And then also during this expedition, we had that mapping capability. We were able to discover a site off of the west coast of Haida Gwaii in that marine protected area network we were talking about. We saw those bubbles in the water column at a site we weren't expecting it. And so we went down and we found this extensive cold seep habitat. There's another blob sculpin poking out behind the carbonate, more of those shells, different animals growing around here. There's those bivalves that host the bacteria on them. And what's really neat about this is that this is right on the edge of one of the proposed marine protected areas, and that to fully encompass this study site, they just have to move the boundaries of the marine protected area like 2 kilometers, I think it is. And they would have known that if we hadn't had this like vessel with the mapping capabilities and been working collaboratively together for this habitat. It's really neat how much we're still learning. And then we finished off the expedition with this really cool place that we visited on the way home. And this image I just threw in because you never know what you're going to find in the deep sea. We literally came across crabs eating squid. And what was crazy about this is that we don't know how these crabs caught the squid or what happened, but it was still alive, and it's like chromatophores. You know how they can change the color of their skin? They were still flaring as these like crabs were fighting over. Oh. And then just to make matters even more confusing for me and make my job even harder on this last seamount, I hope you're seeing, but in and amongst these crabs, oh, those look kind of like those skate eggs again. This is an entirely different seamount, and we actually found another skate nursery, but it doesn't have the same, like it's more questions than there are answers, because we thought we figured it out on the Tusa-Wilson Seamount complex. We thought, oh, the heat of the incubator, this is why there's 2 million eggs here. But yeah, if you look at this again, you're seeing, oh my gosh, there's so many eggs on this seamount as well. And now we have to do more work to find out why. Because again, this is like globally rare. We've looked at other skate nurseries and no one else has numbers like we do. Yes, there are places there are skate nurseries, but nowhere near 2 million in the area that we have and that sort of thing. So this is just another image of where all the eggs were piling up. So I rushed through a bunch of that at the end, but it was just kind of sharing with you like the discoveries that are still ongoing just by taking a camera down, even just initial discoveries, let alone the science that's ongoing. So we now have people who go through the imagery in detail. We have specimens we brought up that are being donated to museums and working with collaborators. There's so much work ongoing still. And so this collaboration is absolutely fantastic. It's helping us get a lot done. But I think one of the biggest parts, and I want to thank you all for being here, is that we really do try to get these cool, exciting stories out about the deep sea. We don't want it to be this strange, scary place. And that thank you for having us and for listening. And if you can, I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity next summer, but if we do, I'll maybe let Nature Vancouver know, and they can like link to our website. It's NEPDEP.com. You can scan this QR code, but we literally just play the video online as we're diving, conducting the dive. You can chat with us, ask us questions. It's incredible. Amazing, the power of technology now. So yeah, thank you so much. And I hope that you guys like the deep sea a little better.
Awesome, Heidi. I'm assuming that, I mean, we'll get to the chat here in a second, but I'm assuming that the skates are actually going right down to the carbonate or the rock, whichever, to lay the eggs. I mean, it was still swimming around at what seemed like an awfully high height above the bottom, but presumably they go right down to the substrate itself to
Yeah,
lay the eggs.
what we've noticed is that they seem to come up and down, and they're actually, if you look at the skate egg, they have little horns or hooks at the end of them. And we don't think labor is the easiest process. And we actually think they're scraping along the corals and some of the rock outcroppings to try and help pull them out. And then the second thing that I will admit is that in the deep sea, there is no light. There's different sounds, there's different geological things going on. And here we come along with this noisy robot with bright lights in the deep sea. So I do think we disturbed her in her process. So part of that was maybe her flying away from us. We don't get super close, but we get enough to get science. And we left her after a while and she hadn't laid her egg. So I think it's a combination of, I do think that the laboring process for these eggs is not straightforward from what we've seen. It does take time and effort, but also I will admit that ROVs can be a bit pesky. But when you compare it with things like trawling, it's a better alternative to learn about the deep sea.
Right. You're
Especially
only
for
there for a short,
fragile. Yeah.
yeah, and you're only there for a short period. It's not like you're um, there for an hour or two. Well, I don't know how much time you are there, but they can recover from that easier than they can from a trawl.
Yes. Yes. Let's. Yeah.
Yes.
Should I look
So,
at the chat, or will you
Well,
guys read them to me? I can try and read them to myself.
yeah,
I,
Joan, do you
I,
want to go?
yeah, I could probably review them for you, and that way you can just sort of focus on the answers. That was amazing, Heidi. And I'm going to go through the chat questions, and then I have a couple myself. But first of all, Trin is asking, is it possible to get involved?
Yes and no. Yes, you can definitely get involved. It's so important for us to connect with people. So you can be involved when we go down the expeditions and stuff like that. Like literally, you can be part of the chat. Like underneath the videos, there's chatting options. You can ask what things are. You can all those sorts of things. That's really important to us because we're trying to get our stories out. If you're directly asking if you can be on the boat and be involved in the science, that is a more complicated answer in the sense that these opportunities come up through our partners. So the best way to be able to be involved is either to work or volunteer with one of our organizations. So either Fisheries and Oceans Canada or Council of the Haida Nation or Ocean Networks Canada or that sort of thing. And then I will admit that we do sometimes pay for like that incredible wrap-up video that you guys saw. That's not me. I don't have time to do that. We do sometimes pay for a media person to come out to see with us. So people have contacted us for those opportunities to be able to come out to see. But again, that'd be like your work things as well. And then we do just have people emailing if they can volunteer. Volunteering is an interesting consideration because we are going out most of the time on Canadian Coast Guard vessels. It's not a straightforward, like, yes, you can do it. We have to go through these things called like security clearances. You have to get your like criminal record check. Like it's just one of those, it's a process. But if you are interested in being involved, it never hurts to check out this website, email, contact us, but best way through is actually through the collaboration. So getting involved with, for example, the Royal BC Museum, they take all of our samples that we collect, and then we've had volunteers who work on the collections, like come look at the animals and help identify them and make sure they're properly preserved in the museum. And so that's one way to be involved as well. But the biggest way, I think, is engagement. Yeah, I hope that answers that person's question.
Well, I hope so too. You gave a lot of possibilities there. Yeah, people are going like 2 million. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of eggs in one place.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people think we're exaggerating, right? But if you looked at that picture of the seafloor and you saw probably at least 30 eggs, your own like relatively untrained eye, that was like a 2 meter by 2 meter area of the seafloor. Like scale that up to the summit of this seamount, and we aren't exaggerating. It's crazy. There's literally 2 million eggs there. It's impressive. Yeah. It's like the conservative end of our estimate, actually, but we just don't want people to call us crazy. So.
Such an important place, and you certainly hope that people who are looking for the skates for other reasons don't tap into that. Anyway, going on, Roy said, is there a direct connection between your research findings and widening the scope of protected areas and or a change in commercial resource regulations?
Yes, which is really fulfilling. So the Tungwan Hutchpikuk Sea Geese Marine Protected Area was informed by our findings about how many seamounts we have, how dense they are, their implications of their biological productivity, the hydrothermal vents a little bit less so, but we helped map out the areas and how to, that sort of thing. Another example that I have that I didn't talk about today in our talk, but we found closer on the coast, the central coast of Canada, in deep water that's more like 200 meters deep water as opposed to that 2,000-meter deep water. But we found Canada's first coral reef. So there's one species of coral that still is branching, but it can branch and form onto each other over time and space. And it's an incredible discovery. They thought it could happen on our coast. Research has happened up and down our coast. Over time, they found like fossil remnants of it, that sort of thing, but never any living. And so we were collaborating with the Central Coast Indigenous Resource Alliance on that, and the Kitisu Hei. And together we kind of shared this information as well as with Fisheries and Oceans Canada. And it's not a marine protected area yet, but immediately the fisheries closures by both the Indigenous and fisheries led. So there's a fisheries closure there. So some things can happen in quick time. The scope of the marine protected areas, a full-fledged Oceans Act marine protected area takes years because there's like consultation processes. There's all these other things that are going. So for example, that Tuzo-Wilson Seamount Complex, it is not protected right now. It is within possible fishing imprint or footprint. And there has been evidence of fishing in the past 5 years on the seamount. So we have now crafted a scientific document, and we've shared it with fisheries management as well as the Council of the Haida Nations team as well, and have provided, the science advice for how unique and fascinating and important this place is, and what our recommendations would be to protect it. So sometimes the time response can be quick and sometimes it's slow. But what is actually really cool is watching the response. And over the past few years, actually being able to make some changes, which, as in tough times in the world, there's other things going on that are not so great. Even in the deep sea, there's deep sea mining happening. There's different kind of industries going on in the deep sea that are having negative effects. So it's nice to actually that Canada's taking the 20 by 30 goals seriously. We will be seeing how things go under a new administration, if they still are, but so far it's been fairly positive, and it's very rewarding so far. Sometimes the biggest bottleneck is actually us scientists and getting our science out. So actually being able to just send people video of things is actually incredible. Be like, we haven't written up the whole document but yet, but look at how cool this is. Or, that can work to a certain degree.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's like you say, it takes a while to get a marine protected area actually set up. But even if you manage fisheries closures, that's a start, right? Especially things that would damage the bottom. Sharon is wondering, do you use any citizen science programs to review your photos? And then she mentioned Zoo Inverse. I'm not familiar with that, but you might be.
Oh, I should have put a link to this, and I wonder, I guess I could still share screen. Let me pull this back up. We now have on the iNaturalist page, we have our own kind of deep sea guides, but then we also just post some of our really random, unique sightings that we have. And as everyone knows, you can go in and vote on what this is and provide your expertise. So that's the closest we have to citizen science right now. All the in-depth scientific rigorous things because we're providing science advice to governments for their decision making and that sort of thing, it's done more robust internally. But for figuring out species, cool observations, that sort of thing, iNaturalist is our best citizen project.
Oh,
Joan,
great.
can I just pop in there while the topic is about protection? When you said there was some fisheries protection on the Tuso area, was that correct? Is that like 1 year or is it longer than 1 year? Because usually the fishery closures is only 1 year. Is this particular area longer than that?
The Tuzo Wilson Seamount Complex is not protected and there is no fishery closure yet. So that one we're hoping someday will have some sort of protection. The Lophelia Reef that I was talking about is closer to the Central Coast. It is just a fisheries closure right now. It's not just for 1 year. It's out. Does not have a time frame on it because it's also being considered in the Northern Shelf Bioregion Marine Protected Area Network. I don't know if anyone's heard about that, but it's a collaboration between the province of British Columbia, Parks Canada, Fisheries and Oceans, and then I can't even remember, I apologize, the exact number of Indigenous communities along the coast, and they're trying to create a marine protected area network. And so the fisheries closure is kind of an interim while they're considering this place and which measure it's going to have. So it's kind of, that it doesn't have a date or a time frame on it right now.
Okay.
The official paperwork has no,
Yeah, okay, thanks. No, just wondering about that. Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks for the clarification on that. So another moving on here in the chat from Jasmine, for those who are dreaming of working on similar projects like yours in the DFO, what would you recommend after they have their Bachelor of Science?
Yeah. I have to admit that the deep sea is a competitive place to get into because, as you've heard, there's only 2 of us at all of Fisheries and Oceans Canada that focus on this, although we do collaborate with a lot of people and we do work together. But the biggest thing that I found is, for example, I got into Fisheries and Oceans Canada at the end of my degree through work experiences. So things like co-op or internships or volunteering. And I hate to say that because you should be paid for your time, but I would definitely consider if you're a university student and you haven't gotten any work experience yet, start looking into your co-op programs. They're at least paid. And I know, for example, my larger team, not deep sea, but the conservation team, we have co-op students that join us every year. And sometimes they do have opportunities to go to on the vessel. But another thing that we always encourage people to do is to kind of follow your passions and try and get work experience in them and see if they're a good fit. We've had people on our teams who have different skill sets. Like, for example, the ROV technicians, like, think about the kids who are so good at video games that translate, and like you just have to have an interest in engineering. When we're out on the vessel, there's literally someone who cooks for us, and like that's a skill to have too. Like if you can cook for 40 people out at sea on a small kitchen, like that's an incredible skill. Um, Being able to be educator or outreach, that's also a different thing. And then also, just last but not least, they have like video storytelling and camera skills. So those are my suggestions for now. And then, yeah, just always look at job boards. It's a complicated time right now with government having just shifted over, but Fisheries and Oceans usually is hiring. And if you even just have an interest at being at sea, Coast Guard is usually recruiting. And you can do anything from, kind of school through them, like a fisheries, I want to say officer, but not a Coast Guard officer where you have to go to school, or you can work up your way through like a deckhand, and those are just like a couple months training and then you're like on the job training. So there's different avenues that way. So not everyone has to be a, PhD in science to be able to get out and do this work.
Yeah, that's some really great suggestions. Yeah, I think people don't think of it that if they just want to kind of be part of this, that being a cook on the boat, right? You need somebody to do that for you. There's just so many, people thanking you, saying how cool it was, how fascinating. I have to, double down on that. That it was really, really interesting. But a few more questions. How long for the eggs to hatch? Now, I'm assuming that Carol is talking about these skate eggs.
So that's another really cool part of the story. And I actually had like 6 slides on that I cut out. So this Pacific white skate, it actually wasn't even known in BC waters until 2019. Like that was the first time. Like, so we are still learning so much about the deep sea. So here we have an opportunity where we've not only seen this animal again, but we've seen it multiple times at the same place. And I told you that we've now had the opportunity to go back to the seamount several different times. So what we've done for part of our science is that we've deployed these long-term monitoring sites. So what we do is when we're flying around the seafloor, we're collecting all kinds of measurements, imagery, all these things that we can analyze after. But what we're doing on these seamounts is that we're creating a 10 by 10 area that we go through and we do super high resolution mapping with our cameras. And we create these like stitched together 3D mosaics afterwards. And what we've done on that seamount is we've been able to go back to the same 10 by 10 meter, and it was a little over a year later, and we were able to actually map out each egg. So like the eggs hadn't moved very much. It wasn't a high flow area. And what we are able to do is because it's got the bright yellow egg to start, then it turns to like a tan, and then it turns to a black. We moved off of that 10 meter by 10 meter site and we collected a few. And using the 2 data combined, we've been able to determine like when it's bright yellow, it's only like this amount developed. When it's dark brown, it's probably 75% developed, but it could be between 75 and 90% developed. Anyway, long story short, they thought that for this skate, it's around 4 years. We think it's between 4 to 9 years that it actually takes the egg to develop. Again, this heat could be speeding that up, which is helpful. But yeah, these animals function on different time scales than we do. Like everything's low and slow and long in the deep sea. And by tracking this over time, by opening up the eggs and the embryos, I almost want to pull up another talk that I have to show you. But it's so cool to see the baby skate eggs in it. And yeah, we're getting better estimates on how long it takes for development.
Wow.
A long time. So it might beat that deep sea octopus, which was just recently announced over 4.5 years, which was the longest gestation period. So.
Yeah, things do happen slow and it's cold and deep, right? All that pressure.
Mhm.
Yeah, again, just more great, sort of responses. Fiona, this is a good one. Fiona says, I can understand why you're so excited and passionate about this, which you are. It comes through.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Um, how about dispersal of the young skates, given that the seamount resources on the seamount must be limited? Um, Once they hatch, do they disperse kind of immediately, or do they stay around the seamount? And do you know?
I love that you asked that question again too, because um, the answer is we don't know. So we have now been back multiple years to the same place. We've gone to different aspects of the seamount, and then we started going deep looking for the juveniles. In another place in the world, I think, for example, like Alaska, there was a good study about how when there is a nursery ground, again, those are smaller numbers, but there would be like a juvenile kind of raising ground. They called it a nursery ground too, but like another area slightly deeper where the juveniles didn't tend to congregate. We can't find them. We don't know the time. We don't know the place.
Mhm.
It's still a big, big question for us. And it's really, really annoying. I'm so sorry to say, but because yeah, we want to be able to tell the story really fulsomely, like the full thing. And we don't have all the answers yet. I guess that's kind of the magic though, too. But if I know we're getting a bit tight on time, but if you guys wanted to get an idea a little bit more about this reproduction that I was just talking about, do you think it's okay if I go through the slides just really quick? I have just two or three that
Yeah.
illustrate this like change over time. So just a reminder, it comes out bright yellow. We have these monitoring sites where we go back, and what these dots are basically showing you is that we've characterized, this year they were yellow, this year they were light brown, this year they were dark brown. We go through and we're seeing a change in the egg cases over time. So first of all, we were able to get an estimate of how many new egg cases are laid every year. Based on that alone, this fits with up to 78,000 new egg cases are laid every year on this seamount for this one species. And again, there's three skates using this. It aligns roughly with what what we believe to be to get that 2.1 million eggs that are on the seamount, and that's combined with like our transecting along. And what we did here, so this is what I was telling you about we opened up a yellow egg case. They're always embryonic. There's only yolk. We opened up the tan colored ones. We'd sometimes get up to like 25% development. And then the darker browns, they'd often be around 60% development. So we use this paper in the middle as a reference. And then the dark brown, we'd have the baby skate, and it's almost fully absorbed the egg case. But we combined this with when we were able to go back each year. And so the previous estimates were that they're about 4.1, and ours are suggesting between 4.8 and 9.6 years of this development over time. And I could go into that in a bit more, but it just kind of was like showing the images a little bit.
Wow. Yeah, that's some commitment. And I think this is kind of obvious now from the last you showed, but the yellow skate egg case contains just a single egg. Is that correct?
Yeah, a single developing embryo is within each egg case. The female is typically pregnant with two at the same time. And from the literature on other species, again, very little is known about the specific species, but about other skates is that the like theoretical turnaround time between egg clutches, it can be only a few days. So theoretically, they come up the seamount, they lay a couple eggs, they go back down. Who knows? Maybe not, but yeah. So, and again, looking at the effort that it took for the females to put them out, it's just crazy to think about how many skates might be coming up this seamount each year, or the females' efforts. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that we're not seeing anything seasonal about it. And again, that kind of makes sense in the deep sea. Like they're not affected by surface temperatures the same way. like we haven't been there in the depths of winter. Unfortunately, going offshore in the depths of winter isn't great, but we've now been there. One year it was May, one year it was August, and one year it was September, and there didn't seem to be any differences in the amount of like yellow eggs or the number of adults we saw or anything like that. So that's also kind of fascinating.
Hmm.
Oh. Yeah, I think that for the most part, people have been really kind of targeting the skates, which are amazing. But there has been some comments about the corals too, like thanks for showing these new corals, and nice to see them and that kind of thing. Oh, and thanks for putting in your iNaturalist while you were talking. You were typing in your iNaturalist thing in chat. That's wonderful.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no worries.
yeah. So just like what size is that white skate? Because it's hard to tell like from your like the videos as
Yeah,
to the dimensions for it.
they're about 2 meters.
Oh, it's big.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the full adults, reproductive adults coming, and the full wingspan. Yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah,
a pretty big skate. Yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah, very big. Yeah.
and Sheila, you had a question as well?
Yes, thanks. I just plugged in about coral. So if it's the pink, sorry, my not good on corals. If it's the pink, I don't think you mentioned black, but jewelry. Is it a hard coral? It is. So, I mean, I'm used to the soft coral being present in BC, but is this is very unique then for hard coral to be found. Maybe not so at those depths, I don't know, but that's quite yeah, unusual.
Yeah, it's again, like we said, we knew precious coral was in BC, but that was literally from like one or two records along our entire coast. And like one of them was a museum sample, like did not know. And then yeah, there's this whole seabed of them up on this one seamount. Again, we haven't been to all of our seamounts and all that sort of stuff, but it's funny because it's a whole exciting, amazing discovery in itself, because in some ways they warrant their own level of protection given what's happened to them globally. But we
Mm,
we've just haven't even been able to dig into them that hard. We have one person that we've sent the DNA to. It is a known species worldwide, so that's good. It's not like we've discovered a whole new species to science, but it's definitely a range extension for them. And yeah, they're just kind of double checking. There was some weird looking ones this year that we took collections of that will be worked on to just make sure they're not, new species of science. But the main corals that you were seeing in amongst the skate nursery ground, those ones are a new species to science. So the big bamboo coral, they're just in a family called Keratosidae, and they might be paired. Again, we've sent it off to a taxonomic expert. We don't have the time and abilities to do this sort of work. And he thinks it's paired with another sample he has in the Pacific, but that it is a new species to science between the two of
wow,
them. So
wow.
that's also very exciting. But yeah, I know
Mm.
I sound very juvenilely excited, but like that's one of our seamounts, and that's how amazing it is. But it just, yeah, the deep sea is really fascinating, and there's still so much to discover. So it's really cool. Yeah.
One more question, if I may, but that's great with the corals. I mean, it's incredible as everything else that has been found. Are most of the seamounts within the 200-mile Canada limit off the coast?
All 65 are the ones that are within BC waters. Yeah. Because we
Wow.
have a whole bunch just off of our borders as well. So yeah.
So protected or not, some of the fishing, so whatever kind of fishing, is potentially illegal, right?
With yes, so the Tugwin Hutchkicook and the San Cumulus Marine Protected Area, between the two of them, they've covered, I think, 80% of so it's like 50 something out of the 65 seamounts are protected. But for example, just outside of our waters, there's a seamount called Cobb Seamount that has crazy evidence of fishing and destruction on it, like international waters, other seamounts as well. I don't work on that as much. There's people that do work on those sorts of things. But yeah, no, most of our seamounts are now protected, which is really rare, I think, within a country to have that.
Yeah,
Both
definitely.
to have that number of seamounts, but also to have that level of protection. The few that aren't protected are a bit more spread out. They're a bit deep, except for, again, the Tuzo-Wilson Seamount Complex. And so we are providing that science advice. There's a very boring, long technical report on it that I might put in the chat just so everyone can go read up on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's wonderful. Thanks so much. I enjoy your enthusiasm, and I can understand why.
And we are coming up to 9 o'clock, pretty close. So if anybody has any other questions, you have like 1 minute. You can unmute yourself now too if you wanted to just ask it. But lacking that, like I say, it's just been great responses. You've probably seen them also in the chat that people were really involved with your presentation and really amazed by it, I think, taken in by all the information. And the deep sea is something we don't typically know about. So thank you so much, Heidi, for spending the evening with us and sharing all this information. It was wonderful and just so cool, all the images. And I see somebody just put very timely work considering the talk of dropping the oil tanker ban off the coast. Yeah. Oh, and can you again list the organizations to get involved with if someone wants to do this kind of work? I think you had mentioned NEPDEP. Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Finally, when we made it, we thought because we worked with robots so much, we were like deep, deep, but we also realized that it actually spells out NEPDEP. So whichever one you prefer. I linked our website, which is our collaboration between all of the partners. But if you go to, I believe it's the partners page, you can then contact like each actual organization, like, Council of the Haida Nation and Ocean Networks Canada, that sort of thing. And then there's also a contact our project page on there that you can email us. The one thing that I'm just going to warn you is that right now we have really limited capacity. Our Indigenous colleagues are overworked. My boss is on parental leave. It's just me at Fisheries and Oceans, and we've actually already gotten 3 emails for people asking to come out with us this year, and we don't know if we're going out. So I hate to be the burden of bad news this year, but this year is not looking good. But I would love to hear from people and like hear that you're still engaged. And I do keep a list of people that have reached out. It's just, I'm just warning that this isn't the yay, everything's going to happen year. I don't think it's just this. It's a time of transition, I guess we call it in government speak. Yeah. But thank you so much for everyone being so engaged, because that's the big part of this project is we are trying to get people to like learn about the deep sea and not be scared of it and like connect with it. Like, what better way to connect other than like being like, oh my God, there's 2 million eggs down here. And you guys should see the AI pictures that are generated about this. It's like scuba divers with like eggs that are glowing. It's hilarious. The news stories that have come out about this are pretty funny, but getting people to know the real story. And the deep sea isn't just this like scary, weird thing. It's connected to us. It does so much for us. It's really important for climate regulating, providing food, all sorts of different things, cultural. And so thank you so much for being engaged audience and for you guys at Nature Vancouver for providing us this platform to try to connect. So
Awesome. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you so much. And deep water icebergs are also pretty darn cool.